Hey everyone, this is my week 5 mini learning module on communications. The learning objectives that I would like everyone to achieve are to learn how to define and manage workplace conflict, to identify nonverbal communication characteristics, and to identify the importance of public relations during crisis management. There's an article in Forbes magazine that calls leadership a contact sport. They say that conflict should be embraced and not feared. It's something that cannot be escaped, especially when you have people communicating with each other all day. Conflict can arise from things such as opposing views, power struggles, competition, performance issues, and even issues that occur outside of work. There are two common causes of conflict: communication and emotions. People will generally get upset due to lack of information, misinformation, or no information at all. People will also sometimes put their emotions into play before identifying the facts, which can lead to conflict quickly. There are 5 conflict management strategies I'd like to discuss: accommodating, avoiding, collaborating, compromising, and competing. Accommodating is when people usually give the other person what they want in order to keep the peace. Avoiding is effective when the issue isn't really that important and the risk of the conflict surfacing outweighs the benefits of resolving it. Collaborating is a resolution that seeks to have everyone solve the problem together and work for an outcome that works for everyone. This method generally isn't used because there's so many opinions going into it and it takes longer to get to the outcome. Compromising is a strategy that is utilized in negotiation where both sides have to give up pieces of what they're fighting for in order to come to a solution. And competing it's usually utilized in emergency situations where one side needs to win and one side needs to lose. This one can only be utilized in a limited number of situations. So nonverbal communication is known as communication without words. Nonverbal communication will have a lot to do with how you're feeling in the current moment. You should be aware of the nonverbal signals that you're sending, and you should also be aware of the nonverbal signals that the other party is sending to you. There are 4 main types of nonverbal communication. It's eye contact, body language, paralinguistics, and facial expressions. Eye contact is important during communication because people will usually look into your eyes to see if you're listening or if you're distracted. If people tend to look away a lot in a conversation, it could be a sign that the truth isn't actually being told. Body language is an indicator of how we feel about what is being said. If someone is slumped over or they have crossed arms, they might not be open to hear what you're saying. If you sit up straight with confidence, you're open to the conversation and you're listening. Paralinguistics are things like tone, pitch, and loudness of your voice. You can tell if someone's being sarcastic by their tone, or you can tell by if they're mad. Facial expressions can also identify how we feel about a situation. If a person is smiling, they're happy with the conversation and they're engaged. If a person is frowning, they are not happy. If someone has a raised eyebrow, it could be a signal that they're confused about what you're saying and you may want to communicate it in a different way. Nonverbal communication is an important piece for both the communicator and the receiver. So, crisis management and public relations. When a problem occurs, managers need to take a step back and analyze the best feasible strategy to deal with crisis management and their stakeholders. It's highly important that key issues are addressed, and they need to figure out the best way possible to address these issues with the information they're given. It is also important to identify both an internal and external communication strategy that best supports everybody that's involved in the crisis. Managers also need to choose the best person to handle the communications aspect, especially when collaborating with the media. What you say to the public cannot be taken back, so it's highly important that you are prepared with a detailed strategy before you actually say anything or give them any information. I just learned a lot about crisis management and public relations firsthand with the fire that happened at my company. Every news channel was at the scene in about 5 minutes. They were walking around trying to get answers out of everyone. The employees, they were talking to absolutely everyone. We asked everyone not to answer any questions to the media, as we wanted to put out a formal message when we actually knew what was going on. We wanted to make sure everyone was safe. We wanted to make sure that, we could talk about our business and when we would be back up and running. So what I did find out is the news made up their own story. So they identified that our building was being torn down. They identified that everyone was out of work. They identified that people got hurt. They said all these different things that actually didn't happen. So the executive team and myself had to put out a press release the next day to ensure the truth was told and to make sure that everybody knew what was going on. The most important thing we discussed was identifying that everyone was safe, and we were very happy that everyone was safe and that we know that it could have went a different way. And, that was the biggest piece. Next, we wanted to make sure that people knew that our operations were back up and running, that we did have a location to go to, and, we wanted to make sure that our customers and vendors were reassured, and all of our stakeholders as well. We wanted to make sure that people didn't think that we were just completely out of business and that was it. We also communicated directly with our customers and vendors, just so that, we wanted to make sure that they heard from us firsthand about what was going on. It was really interesting for me because that was the first time that I had to deal with something as far as such a large crisis and something that happened so quickly. And it was just interesting how things got distorted and how careful you have to be with both your internal and your external strategy. We also had to make sure internally we were communicating with our employees when they would be able to come back, if they were still getting paid, if their benefits were being continued, and, where they were going to be going to work. There was a lot to go into this, and I really got to practice my internal-external communication. Some supplemental materials that I wanted to have you guys take a peek at. This first one is a lynda.com video. It's called Resolving Workplace Conflict, and it has a lot of different tutorials of how to create a constructive climate and how to, effectively resolve conflict amongst teams. The second one is a Body Language for Leaders video at lynda.com. This was an interesting one as well, as it talks about all the different body language and what it could mean and how people interpret it. And then the third thing was an Inc. 5000 article on crisis management. I thought that was interesting as well, especially given everything that I had just gone through. 3 discussion questions that I wanted people to gain from this presentation. Think about a conflict that you had in the workplace. How did the conflict get resolved? Did you utilize any of the strategies that I've outlined? The second one is, what nonverbal signals do you send the most personally? And what nonverbal signals do you most often see with your coworkers? And, do any of these drive you nuts? And the third one is to think about a crisis that occurred at your business or another company. How is the communication handled? What communication strategies were utilized, and was it effective? These are the references that I used to identify all of this information. Does anyone have any questions? Thank you.